Hello. Today we're gonna start a new, hopefully a new video series called Let's Rate and Let's Talk. The name's pending. I don't know what I'm gonna call it, but basically it's just me talking about tier lists, kind of going, just letting me talk. A few weeks ago I did an Xbox video. I guess a few months ago now. I did an Xbox video where I just kind of talked about my feelings on a subject. I really liked it. A lot of people like listening to it. I got a lot of behind the scenes good feedback, which was really nice. So we're just gonna see where this takes us. Pokemon's a very hot topic. People like sharing their feelings in games, and if you have feelings towards any of my opinions or you just want to lay it out there, please let me know. And yeah, we're just gonna rate. Before going into it, I think it's something to it's really important to know or notice and kind of point out is basically this is all opinion based. None of it's concrete like this is the best game ever. I do think Pokemon, the way people like games is basically where you enter into the series. I'm a Gen 3 baby myself, so you're going to see my kind of opinions on Gen 1 and 2 and vice versa. Obviously, I have like older cousins who love Gen 1 and 2. I have kids I work with who love Gen 8 and 7. So it really just depends. Everyone has their first generation, and it kind of just fluctuates from there. That being said, let's start with Red and Blue, which is probably going to be my first of many hot takes today. I don't like Red and Blue. I think Red and Blue have aged very poorly. And I don't think that's an unpopular opinion. I think people just like Red and Blue for it being the first. And I will always respect Red and Blue for being the first, for starting this amazing franchise that most of us love. That being said, looking back on the games, I just think there's too many glitches, there's too many problems with the game, there's too many unbalances. Like, I don't think Red and Blue have aged well, and I never have the urge to play Red and Blue. When Red and Blue was re-released on the Virtual Console, it was more like a cool, let's experience this. And then later they released the next game on the list, which we'll talk about. But before we move on to that game, I just think Red and Blue just haven't aged gracefully. I think in many regards, the sprites in that game are kind of ugly too. There's just a lot of problems with Red and Blue. And I'm sorry for all my Gen 1ers out there. But this might make you feel a little better because I do think Yellow is at least a better game. It's not the best Pokemon game out there, and still not the best way to experience Gen 1 in my opinion. But Yellow at least fixes a lot of the issues I have with Red and Blue. It's prettier. It's more accessible because like all the starters are in the game. It has cool connections with the anime, which is fun. And it's just overall a better package. This was the first time they basically updated the game. There's a few more after this we'll talk about, but I think Yellow was a very good way to upgrade the game, which is, yeah, pretty cool. Then we move on to Gold and Silver, Gen 2. I actually think Gen 2 has aged very well. I think they are in B tier, and I think Gold and Silver has aged really well. The thing is, starting with kind of like these, with Pokemon Red and Blue and then Yellow I think is different enough where like you can kind of separate the topic on them. I do think Crystal's a lot more similar to Gold and Silver than Yellow was to Red and Blue, but I do think it's the better game. I think the way they handle certain aspects, some Pokemon encounters, like I think Crystal's the one where like you can't get a Mareep, which is really weird. There's weird decisions like that, but I think I'm gonna put Crystal at A, and you might be asking, but why? And it's a stupid reason. Maybe people will agree with me. I think Crystal's animated sprites won me over as a kid. I think every time I saw Gold, Silver, and Crystal like on a shelf, I always wanted to play Crystal because the sprites are animated. I know that's a dumb reason to put it a whole tier above, but I do think Gold, Silver, and Crystal are great games still, and they hold up well. Crystal has some little additions to the story. Suicune is more apparent in the story. There's new characters, like I think his name's, I don't know how to say his name. It's Uswine? I have no idea what his name is. It looks like Suicune, but it's like with an E. I think there's enough additions in Crystal that I really like it. And again, compared to Red and Blue, I think Crystal and Gold and Silver hold up very, very well in the grand scheme of things. Although now that I'm looking at it, you know, that whole tangent I just went on, I'm actually going to take it back. I'm actually going to put it in B tier, but I'm going to put it above Gold and Silver. And there's a reason for that later on I'll talk about. Okay. Next we have Ruby and Sapphire. So Ruby and Sapphire were my first games, specifically Ruby. And because of that, Ruby will always have a sacred place in my heart. That being said, I actually don't really care for Ruby and Sapphire specifically. I think they're fine games, and this is where it's going to get a little controversial. I mean. I think Ruby and Sapphire are better than Gold and Silver, but I think the updated Crystal is better than Ruby and Sapphire. Is it because Ruby and Sapphire doesn't have animated sprites? Maybe, but probably not. Ruby and Sapphire definitely took steps in the right direction. And I think they're great games. B tier is not a tier that is bad. B tier is a great tier to be in. The thing is with Ruby and Sapphire is there's no post game in this game. Once you beat the game, there's literally nothing to do in this game besides besides legendary hunt a few Pokemon like the Regis or Latios or Latias, depending on the version. But other than that, there's really not a lot to do. This version also doesn't really have a national dex, so you're kind of locked into the 200 Pokemon in the game. There's a lot of minute things in Gen 3 that kind of really... I mean, I can talk about this in another video, but Gen 3, I think, as a whole, is a perfect generation. But when you start piecing the puzzle pieces apart, like, it actually is kind of a little bit of a mess. And I think Ruby and Sapphire are the perfect example of that. To me, they are incomplete games because they are relying on you're going to buy the next 3, 4, even the GameCube games. Hopefully that made sense, because now we're going to move on to Fire Red and Leaf Green, which I think are A tiers. This is a spoiler for these games later, but I honestly think these are the best ways to experience the Kanto region. I think Fire Red and Leaf Green are near... Or do I want them in S tier? I'm going to keep them in A tier right now. I might move things around later once everything's on the board. But I'm going to keep it on A tier. Fire and Leaf Green, I think, are near perfect games. It's probably second place of my most played Pokemon game over and over. This game definitely reminds me of like summer camp. Yeah, these games are special. And I really enjoy these games. Again, like I said, I think they're the best ways to experience Kanto. But not only that, unlike Ruby and Sapphire, these Fire and Leaf Green's post game is, I think, really meaty and juicy. I know a lot of people like to point like the Stevie Islands are really fast, but it's not how fast the post game is. Like, the thing is, people don't realize, like, again, and this is looking at from perspective when I was a kid. Like, I think any game, if you know what you're doing, you can get through it quickly. But with Fire and Leaf Green, there was enough, like, you want to search, you want to stay in a specific route and catch the Johto Pokemon. Like, there's enough where, like, you're doing stuff and you feel like you're accomplishing things. Yeah, Stevie Islands only had 4 or 5 little small islands, but it's the sense of adventure. You're like, okay, this is really cool. And the Stevie Islands are beloved locations that people still want back to this day. And that shows you, like, it was just kind of really cool to explore outside of Kanto into a remake that, you know, was supposed to be Kanto. You look back on all these other remakes that we've gotten, and they've never done something like that again. You never got to explore a new place in a region. So I think that just shows how special Fire Red and Leaf Green are. Yeah, I love Fire Red and Leaf Green. I hope they come to Switch one day, because I definitely would want to replay them. Alright, and we have Emerald, I think our first S tier game. I think Pokemon Emerald is basically what Ruby and Sapphire wanted to be, but they weren't. I think Emerald, down to the animated sprites, to the better cohesive story, I think. Again, not like a novel-written essay, 10 plus... What did I just say? What I'm saying is the story isn't like the best thing in gaming, but I think there's enough there. Like, again, Ruby and Sapphire felt disjointed because you had 2 teams. and I don't even remember if I think the teams barely showed up. Like if you had Ruby, Aqua barely shows up, and if you had Sapphire, Magma barely shows up. Pokemon Emerald, it seems more cohesive. Like these two teams are fighting each other. The better story. Rayquaza being basically in control of Groudon and Kyogre. Like there's just a whole lot more going. And then, obviously, you have to talk about it. The Battle Frontier was a great addition. It's something I never really did as a kid, but I always appreciated it. I think that's where the importance is. I think that's where Game Freak kind of fails to see. Like now, I know nowadays, like, oh, the Battle Frontier is too hard. Kids will never understand. And to a point, I get it. Because as a kid, I didn't get it. But also, there's a lot more, like, look up YouTube tutorials and all that. I think kids would be able to do it now. Kids are just smarter now, I think, too. But it was still cool to have. Renting Pokemon was my favorite thing to do at the Battle Factory. I think I got one symbol, and that was at the Seviper place. The Seviper building. One day I do want to collect all the Battle Frontier. I'm hoping this game comes to Switch one day, and let's do it in that version. But Pokemon Emerald, great game. Again, I think it's the game Ruby and Sapphire I wanted to be. But Emerald, I think, just did it tenfold, 10 times better. Great games. Now, in a similar vein to Ruby and Sapphire, we have Diamond and Pearl. Diamond and Pearl are not good games. There, I said it. And I think after the remakes we got later on, we'll talk about, I think people kind of realize that. They're just slow games. They're really cool when you first play them. But again, we're looking in the grand scheme of it. We're looking in a world where Platinum exists. And because Platinum exists, Diamond and Pearl suffer a lot. From story-wise, from Pokedex, from features, from post-game, from legendaries. Like, there's just a lot of stuff. From events. Like, Diamond and Pearl, I think, just missed the bar. So because of that, I think Diamond and Pearl are going to be... Oh, man. I think Diamond and Pearl... Damn, I really have Crystal on this high pedestal, huh? I think I'm going to put Diamond and Pearl... I'm going to put Diamond and Pearl... in front of Ruby and Sapphire. In the B tier. I feel like I'm okay with that right now. Let's see. We'll come back later and see how I feel about it, but... yeah, we'll just leave it at that, I guess. Yeah, Diamond and Pearl are just weird games. Again, in the same vein as Ruby and Sapphire, like, they're just these weird games where, like, they wanted to be so much more, and they eventually became that just in another game. And Platinum, this next game right here, I think does that. Platinum, I think, is a S-tier game. Platinum does everything I wanted Diamond and Pearl to do. They expanded the Pokedex. They bettered the story. They gave Pokemon cooler form, like Giratina, Rotom, Shaman. Like, these Pokemon got cooler forms. The Pokedex got expanded. Some Pokemon got cooler sprites. As you can tell, I really like sprites. I don't know why I like sprites this much. It's a thing I always liked as a kid. Here we are. So, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, and I think Platinum is just a better game. Now, is it better than Emerald? I'm looking at this. And this is where the nostalgia is going to get in my way. I actually think it is better than Emerald. I know my friend Hector's probably looking at me in shock right now, and I'm sorry. But if I'm looking at it in the grand scheme of it, Platinum is just, I think, a better game. Barely. Both still S tier. But yes. Yeah. Now, in the same vein, Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Now, I'm going to place these above Platinum. Just off the bat. Because Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver were originally my favorite Pokemon games for the longest time. For years, these were the games. And for a lot of people, they still are the games. Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver are what basically the definition of a Pokemon remake, I think, should be. I think it set up so much potential of, like, what can be done in these things, in these remakes. And you add a Pokewalker accessory, which I know a lot of people, when they talk about this game, they don't talk about the Pokewalker, but it is part of the game. and I think it should be talked about because it's a pretty cool thing about the game. I remember using the Pokewalker so much as a kid, and there's just something so special about it that was so unique. And running into people like one time I wanted to check the Pokewalker in school, and I went to the restroom and just to check in. A kid walked in, I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna get caught. Like they're gonna laugh at me. No, he pulls out a Pokewalker too. He also wanted like stuff like that. Like I think Heart Gold and Soul Silver just accomplished so much. And for me, being a Gen 3 baby, Gen 2 was kind of like this untouched territory I'd never experienced at the time. With playing Gen 1 remakes and then playing the Gen 3 games, Gen 2 being remade was a very big deal for me. So again, in that regard, it holds a special place in my heart. That being said, it's a fantastic game. It's a fantastic game. It's a fantastic remake. The Pokemon follow you. A lot of people hold this game to the gold standard, the gold tier of this is what a Pokemon game should be. And when people say this is their favorite game, I do not bat an eye. I do not give them a look. I'm like, yeah, that is a pretty damn good Pokemon game. So shout out to Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver for being one of the best remakes in gaming, I think. I know that's a big statement, but like I just think they did the translation to the new hardware so well. And, you know, some could say it was the last good remake. Some would say. Not me, though. But we'll get there. Alright. Now we are at Gen 5. The controversial one, I think. I've always been a Gen 5 lover. I always liked Gen 5 as a whole since Gen 5 was conceived. And that hasn't been the case in the Pokemon community. Over the years, it's, I think, grown to be loved more. But the thing is, the way I tell people is Black and White and Black and White 2 are aging like fine wine. It's something that I think was ahead of its time that people were just not ready for. And now that people are looking back on it, I think a lot of people wish they would do something very similar again. So let's talk about Black and White first. So Black and White's big shtick, big gimmick was there was only new Pokemon in the game. And I think this is such a cool way of playing a Pokemon game. And they're probably never going to do it again because, one, it's a lot of work, but two, also, I think just the way it was received, I think, was not what Pokemon was expecting. But for those who don't know, Pokemon Black and White have 156 new Pokemon, and until you beat the game, and a little bit of the post-game, you can only catch Black and White Pokemon. You can only catch Unova Pokemon. You can only catch Gen 5 Pokemon. And being forced to use new Pokemon, I think, is a genius way because you are buying a new Pokemon game. You're going for the new Pokemon. And nowadays, when people like, there's not enough new Pokemon, I think they've gotten better. We'll get there when we get there. But what I'm trying to say is, I think it was really cool being forced to use a new Pokemon. The story was really a lot more constructed, a lot more deeper meanings, a lot more heartfelt themes. The graphics of Black and White, I think, are basically peak Game Freak graphics. I think they found an art style, they nailed it. It's one of those things you look on like a computer screen, like I can pull up a screenshot right now and you'll be like, what is this? But it's one of those things like it looks really good on a small DS screen because the pixels aren't like compressed. It's really cool. The hype to Black and White was really interesting. I remember seeing there's just a lot. Everything surrounding Black and White, I think, was really fun and unique, and it felt different. I will say this: out of all the Pokemon generations, even the future ones we're gonna talk about, Black and White felt the most unique. Like it felt like the most different Pokemon game out there. And for that, I applaud it. I think it was just a fun, ahead of its time game. So for that, I'm going to put Black and White in the A tier, above Fire Red and Leaf Green. Now, Black and White 2. Black and White 2, I think, just knocks it out of the park with Pokemon. I have made a video on this. If you haven't checked it out, it's on my YouTube Shorts or TikTok or Instagram, wherever you're seeing this. But Pokemon Black and White 2, I think, are the best Pokemon games. So that being said, I'm going to put them above Heart Gold and Soul Silver. And why do I think they're the best Pokemon games? Well, to summarize what I talked about before, they just have the most content. They have I think Black and White have a better story, but Black and White 2's story are closely second. I think it follows a lot of the same footsteps Black and White do. But it's also a sequel to Black and White, so you see the results of like things you did in Black and White, and if you have a save file, like you can transfer it over to save file. Like it's really cool what they did, and this whole thing, like they've never done this again, and they totally could, because with Switch save data and stuff, like you could just scan your save data. Rather, I think you had to like have two DSs and have them talk to each other. It was like a whole arm and a leg thing. I was fortunate enough when my sister had a DS, so we can kind of communicate that way. Anyways, Black and White 2 did so much. They introduced fusing Pokemon. They have this. They have the World Tournament, so similar to the Battle Frontiers, this whole battle facility where you just battle every gym leader and every Elite Four member and every champion. It was awesome. To this day, people are still begging Pokemon to bring it back. Will they ever bring it back? I don't know. We're at the point where there's like 9 generations of gym leaders they'd have to bring back. Definitely feel like it would be a lot of work. But hey, people would appreciate it if you did do it. The thing about Black and White 2 is, which I've also mentioned in my video, I just feel like not enough people played it. It came out when the 3DS was out, so I know a lot of my friends were like, no, I'll just wait for the next 3DS Pokemon game. And a lot of people skip Black and White 2. It didn't sell like crazy well, and you look at, I think it's the lowest selling Pokemon game of all time, which is bananas because it's the best Pokemon game of all time, in my opinion. And yeah, I think that's all I can say about Black and White 2. I can really talk about Black and White 2 all day, but we have to move on to X and Y. So, I think this is where the fall of Pokemon begins. I still love every Pokemon. As you can see, I don't even have an F tier, because I don't think any Pokemon game is F tier. But I do think the fall off in quality does start dropping off. And X and Y is a perfect example of that. I actually do love X and Y. I love X and Y a lot, but the thing is, it's one of those games, like, I'll think about it and be like, oh, they should have done this. Or they think about this and like, oh, they should have done that. And I think what happened is X and Y falls in the Ruby and Sapphire and the Gold and Silver department, and the Diamond and Pearl department, where they wanted to be these better games, and those games got their better games, but X and Y never did get their better game. So because of that, X and Y's faults are just forever their faults, which is unfortunate, because I think X and Y at the core is a really good game. The Pokedex is amazing. I think the 3D, the art style in that game, I think holds up really well. I think it's, I would argue, this is where the pitchforks come out, and this is why I'm going to rank it where it is. I think this was peak Pokemon 3D. I think the Pokemon 3D models look great. They're not washed out yet, like they will be, like they will be later. I think the little chibi half-human trainers are perfect. They're not weirdly proportioned like Sun and Moon, but they're like not like chibi like Black and White. I think they're the perfect medium. I just think everything, and then the landscape of Kalos, I think, is just beautiful in general. You get such diverse landscapes in X and Y. I like X and Y. I think they could be better, but I'm going to put them in the top of B tier. I think they're better than Crystal, Diamond, Pearl, Ruby, and Sapphire. I think Z would have been up there in A or S if they got a Z. I know we're getting the Legend Z, but I think it's going to be a different thing. I don't think it's going to be the Z version people wanted. So yes, X and Y, B tier. Great games. I also got a lot of my friends back into Pokemon, so that's always a good memory. But all right, the next games are Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. So let's talk about Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. These games are remakes of my first generation. These games are remakes of basically a game I have in S tier. I know the remakes of Ruby and Sapphire, but they do incorporate a lot of Emerald stuff. Unlike another game we'll talk about later. I like Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, but there's a big but. I don't think they're the greatest remakes in the franchise. Hear me out. Spoilers for, I guess, this game, but it is implied that Ruby and Sapphire take place in a different universe in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. In the end of the Delta episode, Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, it's implied that these are just two different versions. Now, in Fire Red and Leaf Green and Heart Gold and Soul Silver, they don't talk about multiverses like they do in this game. But it's always, my implication was always that it's just the original games remade. Yes, Gold and Silver takes liberties to like add like Lyra and stuff, but like basically being the same story retold. It's Pokemon. What I'm trying to get at is Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire feel more like a reimagining of Ruby and Sapphire than a remake. Think of it like Final Fantasy VII to Final Fantasy VII remake. I know there was remake in the title, but like it's more of a reimagining. They have the assets and characters and lore of like this franchise already, this region, and they kind of just used it in their own way. Because in this version, you have Mega Evolution, you have like the Delta, or you have like the Primals, and you know, I think they talk about the Kalos War. Like they're dealing with a lot more stuff. Because of that, I think I look at Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire more as its own game than a remake. Now, at the end of the day, I know it's a remake. I know there's a lot of, you know, still going the same badges, yada yada. And that, at the core of it, I think, all that to say, I think it's a great game still. I think, I remember when this game came out, a lot more people were hating on it than loving it. I think it's now come to the concession of like, it's fine. I like Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. I'm going to put it at the A tier. I think Fire and Leaf Green are better remakes, but Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire are still great games. My one critique with it is I actually don't think the art style, even though it's X and Y's art style, I actually don't think it works with the Hoenn region as well. I think it works well enough, but it's my one critique. I just kind of wish it was a little bit more fateful, but that's just me. All right. Now that we got all the good stuff out of the way, let's talk about Gen 7. Now, again, if you've been watching my shorts, you know that it's no secret that I don't like Gen 7 very much. So let's talk about it. Sun and Moon were probably my most disappointed Pokemon games to date. Well, we'll see. But Sun and Moon were not fun games for me. Sun and Moon came out at the height of Pokemon Go. Not even at the height, but the same year Pokemon Go came out. So, like, Pokemon was at its peak. I think Sun and Moon sold as well as it did because of Pokemon Go. And because of that, I think people disassociate, like, how much people maybe didn't like Sun and Moon. I know there are a lot of Sun and Moon lovers out there. The thing is with Sun and Moon is just, it's a slow game. Kind of like how Diamond and Pearl was always criticized for being slow and tedious. I think Sun and Moon is just like that, but just by the concept of not gameplay, but like story beats, if that makes sense. The gameplay is fine. It's quick. It's snappy. They had a lot of good quality of life changes. I think, no, X and Y did it, but I was going to say that's an X and Y. Never mind. But there's a lot of quality of life changes and stuff. I actually really like the Alola Pokemon. But Sun and Moon in a nutshell is missed opportunity. The story actually is pretty great, but the problem is because it's all text-based and you're reading, it kind of takes you out of it. And I know it's an RPG, there's a lot of text, but like there's a lot of talking in this game. Like it's not even like oh, you don't like to read. Like no, they just keep rambling. Like it's not even interesting text. That's my problem. If the story was as interesting as like a Zelda game, again, I'm not comparing Pokemon story, but I'm saying like Zelda has a lot of text in some games, but it's okay because it's interesting text, it's funny text. Pokemon Sun and Moon's text is not fun. Like it's very much like not Hop. What's his name? Hal, something like that. The rival. It's just him talking about like doing this, and that for the 15th time. Like it. It's just a mess. So I'm gonna put Sun and Moon in D tier. I think it's better than Red and Blue, but Sun and Moon. Oh, and the biggest missed opportunity for me, and again, I've talked about this in other videos too, is Ultra Beast. I love Ultra Beast, and this shows you that how much I love the Pokemon and the design of Alola. I think Ultra Beasts are awesome, which is weird because that's the one thing people actually don't like about Sun and Moon. For people who love Sun and Moon, like, oh, Ultra Beasts are weird, like they don't belong in that game. It's like, well, that's the point. They're so like alienated and like weird looking because they're from another universe. Like I think that's so cool, but they don't do anything with it. They don't do anything. So, yes, Sun and Moon, not the greatest games. I will say, this is a side tangent. I've told my kids this before, because my kids love Sun and Moon. We've had these arguments before. I think in the very far future, when Sun and Moon are in line to get remakes, if they do them right, with cutscenes and voice acting, with, you know, because like Pokemon will have to get the voice acting eventually, right? I think we're going to get to a point where Sun and Moon actually are probably going to have really awesome remakes. And I think the world of Alola is really going to benefit maybe like a more open world style. But I do look forward to that, whenever that is. I don't look forward to it because I'll probably be old. But yeah, that's just a side tangent I've thought about before. Like, when they get a chance to revisit Alola, I think they're really going to do well. But we will get to revisit Alola in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. These games are fine. Honestly, I don't have really much to talk about. They're just Sun and Moon again. Yeah. The thing is with Sun and Moon, like, I didn't really like Sun and Moon. A lot of my friends didn't like Sun and Moon. My best friend, Nick, we've always gotten every Pokemon game together. This was the first Pokemon game he skipped. This is the only Pokemon game he skipped. No, just kidding. He skipped one more. But this was kind of like his breaking point. Like, he didn't really like Sun and Moon. And we found out they're getting essentially just kind of reprints, because a lot of the game doesn't change. The only thing that really changes is like the post game, which is cool. And because of that, I will put it right here. I do think it's better than yellow. The post game is cool. I don't know. I just don't think they did enough. I just don't think they did enough. There's cool. I mean, there's new Pokemon. That's cool. This also came out when the Switch was out, so like playing a 3DS game while my Switch was on my TV, like it just felt weird. At least with the 3DS black and white, like I can still play it on my new 3DS. Like it was really, really bizarre. I get it. Install bits, blah 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 blah. Pokemon Stars should have been a real thing. Justice for Pokemon Stars. Make it happen, Game Freak. Next is Pokemon Let's Go, Eevee and Pikachu, and let me tell you, this may be controversial. I like these games. I really do like these games. I think they're perfect cleansings of what we got the last few years. This is put in perspective. Some people liked X and Y, some people didn't. Some people liked Omega Ruby, some people liked Alpha Sapphire. Some people liked Sun and Moon, some people didn't, some people liked Ultra Sun. Like, it was very divided. It wasn't like a black and white where, like, yes, you had those people talking smack about it, but, like, overall, like, people are enjoying the new games. You know what I mean? Let's Go and Pikachu, Let's Go Pikachu and, let's go, Let's Go. Pokemon Let's Go didn't fix that, because there are definitely people who hate Let's Go. But for me, it was a good cleansing of, like, let's go back to basics. Let's go back to Kanto. Let's go back to the original 151. Hey, do you know that Pokemon Go game you've been playing, or I've been playing for years? Let's make it very accessible for the Pokemon Go crowd. And it did work, because my mom played this game. Like, she loves Pokemon Go. She's never going to touch Black and White 2. But Pokemon Let's Go was a game that she could understand. I think these games are overhated, but I will say there are some choices I would have changed. First of all, this game should not be a $60 game. This game should be a $30 game, maybe a download only, whatever. Maybe even a $20 game, because it is just Pokemon Red and Blue. Second, it would have been really cool if you can also, and this is just a wish, but it would have been cool. It would have been cool if we beat the game, maybe you get access to the original Red and Blue. Because the thing about Red and Blue, the original, or Yellow, is they are more complex than Let's Go. There's a more of a intense battle system, I think. I also wish it just didn't limit you to 150 Pokemon, or 151, or 153 if you want to get technical, because of Meltan and Melmetal. Also, this game introduced Meltan and Melmetal, which is pretty cool, I think. Yeah, these games are fine. I have fun with them. I know a lot of people don't like them. Shiny Hunting was fun. They're fine. I'm going to put them... How fine are they, though? I'm going to put them on B tier right here. I think X and Y, I'd rather play X and Y, but Let's Go, still good time above these games. I think that's a good choice. All right, let's get to the Switch games, because these are the ones that cause drama. So, For Sword and Shield and for Scarlet and Violet, I will be talking about this game as a whole. That means I'm including the DLC. Because at the end of the day, even though you're paying essentially double price, you're essentially getting a whole package. So, I mean, I'll just rate it based off that. So, Pokemon Sword and Shield. I don't hate them, like a lot of Pokemon fans do. I think the story is the worst Pokemon story of all time, because it's non-existent. I think the post-game, minus the DLC, is the worst post-game of all time. And that's talking from like a Ruby and Sapphire standpoint, where there's literally nothing. But I'd rather literally do nothing than play whatever Sword and Shield threw at me. The way you catch Zamazenta and Zacian in this game is ridiculously tedious. I still have not caught my Zamazenta and my Shield. My cousin just ended up giving me his, because it was so tedious and dumb and horrible. That being said, the wild area was really cool. Again, it's a glitchy mess. It's dumb that the shinies don't appear in the overworld, because they just did in Let's Go a few months prior to that. But it's still fun nonetheless. Max raids, or raids in general, are awesome to see in the main series. Pokemon Go introduced that, and now they're in the main games, and I think they work well enough. That being said, the world of, I don't even know this region's name. Kalos? No. What's this region's name? Galar. The region of Galar, I think, is really boring. And I don't think that's the region's fault. I think that's the way the game designs you. It's just a straight line up. You start at the bottom of the region and you're just going up. And really, at the end of the day, that's not fun. Like, you look at other regions like Hoenn or Kanto, like, you're kind of jumping all over the place. It's really cool, kind of connecting the dots. You pass by a town that you maybe can't have access to, but like you go back there later and now you have a shortcut. Like, that's good region design. There's a whole video. I forgot his name, but maybe I'll put in a link if I remember. I'll put his link in the description. But he basically talks about region design, and you know, I'm sure if you're watching me, you probably know about his video. You know who I'm talking about. But it's a really good video, and it basically establishes the flaws of Sword and Shield's kind of story and region. But Sword and Shield did get DLC. But I'm not gonna lie, I don't think the DLC is that great. The first DLC was definitely like, it was fine. I remember when it came out, me and my friend, like, we played it. I don't think I got my Cub Fruit for a while though, because I didn't feel like intrigued to. It was cool to see like a bigger open world, but like, it was fine. Nothing like groundbreaking. The second DLC was a lot better, a lot more story oriented, where there was like, I think 3 paths like what you can take. The story was still pretty shallow, but at that point I was just kind of used to that Sword and Shield story shtick, where like, yeah, this is what you get. But I think the second DLC was a lot better, and the second DLC is probably what's gonna make me rank it higher than what it was originally gonna be. If we're talking about Sword and Shield base, it would probably be right here. But when you add the DLCs, I'm actually gonna put it. Dang, where would I put it? Actually, no, I'm gonna put it right here still. I think even with the DLCs, I'd rather play these older games because I think they're just better games. Yeah, I think that's about right. Again, we'll look at it as a whole after. All right, 3 more games. Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. Oh man, talk about nostalgia bait. I loved these games when they came out. I was hooked. But then nostalgia wore off, and I backed up, and I'm like, all right, let's look at these from an actual standpoint. And these aren't good games. The first big issue, and this is the big issue everyone will bring up, they remade Diamond and Pearl. I already talked about earlier how these games aren't great games. Yet they're in the B rank. Go figure. These games aren't great in the grand scheme of it because Platinum exists. These games are fine. They're playable. They introduced us to DS Pokemon. They're fun. But Platinum existing brings them down, where they could have been right here, but now they're right here. In fact, they might go lower at when I'm looking at the whole thing. Nah, they're still beat there. They're still good games. Okay, but my problem is they remade these games. With Heart Gold and Soul Silver, they got crystal elements. With Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, they got emerald elements. With Fire and Leaf Green, they didn't really get yellow elements because there's not a lot to take from that. But what I'm saying is they always got the best features from that generation into the remakes. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, just throw that out the window. The problem with these games is they just did the least amount of effort. Let's Go, being in Kanto and being a remake of Kanto, and they said we're only going to include Kanto, also included Alola forms. They didn't have to do that. In fact, I don't think anybody would have batted an eye if they didn't do that, but they did. These games could have introduced the Alola forms or the Galar forms, or updated to include the later Hisuian forms, but they didn't do any of that, which is like, how are you gonna cross promote like that when things don't work? You know, you look back in Gen 3, like, yes, Ruby and Sapphire were incomplete games, but you can still get like Kanto Pokemon in Ruby and Sapphire once you got Kanto games. They existed in the game's code. They were prepared for that. And I know that's kind of different, but like it really isn't. Like the fact that you just hard cut 493 Pokemon, no exceptions, like I just think is a big flaw. I don't know. These games, they're just low effort. They're not great. I want to rank them higher because I did enjoy playing them. But again, it's just that nostalgia. That nostalgia just got me hooked. Playing with my friends, shiny hunting, like, you know. I want to put it... I'm going to put it right. I'm going to put it right here. I still think I'd rather play it than Sun and Moon, to be honest. So, the one thing I will say about this game that I will defend is I think the art style in these games are perfect. I know a lot of people hate it and they say they're ugly. I don't understand that criticism, and sometimes like I've watched videos like people like breaking down the art style of how bad it is. I'm like staring at the screen. I'll pause it and I'll be staring at it like, okay, what am I looking at? I'm like, no, I still like the art style. I think it's cute. I think it works. The one thing, oh my god, and this makes me want to put an F tier. I'm not gonna, but the one thing I will say, my voice is giving out. The one thing I will say is the controls in this game are horrendous, though. It's one of those things I can't even explain. You kind of just have to be there. You kind of have to have it in your hand. You have to go over a ledge on a bike. Like, it's just, I don't know why it controls so bad. I don't know what the heck. I don't know. Now, they hold on. We're gonna get to the good stuff. Let me drink some water. They screwed us over. They screwed us Sinnoh fans with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. But it's okay. I forgive them because they gave us Legends Arceus. Legends Arceus, I think, is the best Pokemon game since Black and White 2. It's not even a question to me. This game is amazing. And I'm going to put it in S tier above Platinum and Emerald. Pokemon Legends Arceus, I think, redefined and reinvigorated my love for Pokemon. And I feel like a lot of people felt the same way. You know, the thing is with this game, I also know a lot of people who didn't feel that way, which is unfortunate because I think these games are, like, amazing. The story gets good at the end, but, you know, your journey throughout the story main game, like, it's not great. There's a lot of talking again. Kind of falls under the Sun and Moon syndrome. But thankfully, it has amazing gameplay to fall back on. This game was being made at the same time as our next game we're going to talk about, but I'm hoping they took feedback from this game and they incorporate it in Gen 10. Because I think Pokemon Legends Arceus, well, I guess they will incorporate it in Legends ZA next year, hopefully. But I think the prospect of Pokemon being able to hurt you and the fact that you can just throw Pokeballs and not have to battle, like, all that works so well. Being in an older Sinnoh is awesome. Seeing older forms of Pokemon is so awesome. Seeing Dialga and Palkia get their origin forms that they deserve from over a decade ago was such a magical moment. It's one of those things I wish I recorded my reaction for things back then, because you would have got some great reactions. of me back then. But unfortunately, I was not a content creator yet. Am I a content creator? Am I allowed to call myself that? Anyways, Legends Arceus, just one of those games that just took my breath away. I think it was in my top 10 games of all time for a while. But I think over the last few years, there's been some great games. I think it's slowly moved down. But they're great games. They're great game. Also, shout out to it being one game. I know that's a weird thing to point out, but like, you get this game, you can catch all 200 something Pokemon in the game. Like, there's no like, you could trade, but you don't have to. And I think that's such a minute thing we don't talk about enough, where it just felt good just buying one game. I definitely think they looked at it like, because it sold a lot less than like Scarlet and Violet or Sword and Shield, but I also think because people like me weren't double dipping. Like, you have to realize, like, people are double dipping. That's why the sales are always so high. So, shout out to Arceus. I love that Arceus got lore finally. Arceus was that figure on the playground when I was a kid that we just talked about. So, shout out to Legend Arceus. I love that game. I can talk about it for years. I probably will. And then we have our last game, Scarlet and Violet. Scarlet and Violet. I literally had a discussion with my friend Max earlier today. These are games I had no expectations for. Arceus surprised me, yes. But Sword and Shield kind of got me in this weird loop of like, dang, dude, those games, they were fine, but like, I want it to be better. When I saw Scarlet and Violet, I'm like, these look cool. But honestly, right now, my expectations are low. Scarlet and Violet aren't the best games in the series, but they definitely exceeded my expectations. Yes, they were low, but I think they're good games. Do they have technical problems? Oh my gosh, yes. Why aren't these things patched yet? These games are a technical mess, and it's sad to say that they don't bother me anymore, not because they don't exist, but because I've gotten used to them. That is not an excuse for a game, but it's the excuse I have for it. This game runs at like 10 FPS. Not even joking. You can go look at like me shiny hunting in these games, and it's really bad. I think I was streaming this game once. People were like, dude, get a better capture card. I'm like, no, this is how the game looks. This is how the game runs. Like, I'm running at max like capacity here. This is my freaking Switch is on fire right now. This is the best it's gonna look. Which sucks because the game, the world, the environments, they actually are nice. The story is a simple story, but it works, in my opinion. There's 3 lines. There's the gym line, which is just beat the gyms. And I think beat the gyms can work. It worked in Fire and Leaf Green, essentially. You had one side quest with, like, Giovanni and all that, but, like, sometimes I just want to do gyms. Like, it's not that deep. The second line was, like, this whole, like... What was the second line? I don't even remember. Oh, it was like the Titans, right? Or yeah, the Titans, something like that. The bigger Pokemon, which is cool. You got like a little deep backstory with your friend Arvin. Sweet enough. You're like, oh, okay, cool. And then the third line was with Penny. That was fine. But what the game does really well is these 3 storylines are like, they're fine. They actually come together into like a final story where people will say, me, myself included, this is like the best ending to a Pokemon game ever. Like, you're kind of gripped in. Like, you're like, what the heck is going on? I remember just being on my bed, like, just playing this game, like, this is a Pokemon game? Like, it gets really, like, you get really turned on your upside down. Like, what the heck's going on? Really cool ending. So it's already high in my ranking just based off that. But the DLCs are actually not that bad either. The first DLC is really short. But I actually like the island you're on a lot more than the first DLC in Sword and Shield. And I like that the DLC is a 2-parter. So, like, you get a story beat in part 1 that continues to part 2. Again, the story is not the best, but I like that it connects. I like that there's a payoff to it. And the second DLC, kind of like the first DLC, is just a lot better, a lot more... Which is funny, because the second DLC is kind of just a zoo. But it works. DLCs are fine. I had fun with the DLCs. I think shiny hunting in this game is a lot more... And that's the thing. Shiny hunting in this game is a lot more fun than Sword and Shield. So, like, once I beat the DLC in Sword and Shield, like, I didn't have an inclination to go shiny hunting. But in Scarlet and Violet, I did. So, like, there's a lot more replay value to me. So, Scarlet and Violet are going to be... Sorry, I'm allergic to bad games. Just kidding, just kidding. I like Scarlet and Violet. Thank you for all those people who said bless you. So here's my thing. Scarlet and Violet are definitely above X and Y. I can move it. But the thing is Scarlet and Violet a B tier game or an A tier game? You know, I really want to put it in A tier. I really do. But I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna. Okay, so let's look at this. Before we end this, let's think about this. So the S tier I think is for sure gonna stay. I think this is the perfect S tier to me. These are my top 5 Pokemon games. No brainers. A tier I think is also good. Black and White are amazing games. Fire and Leaf Green and Omega Ruby are exceptional remakes. With Heart Gold and Soul Silver being the crown jewel. It's B tier that I'm more a little bit like, what do we want to do here? I think Scarlet and Violet are better than X and Y. It's close. But I think Scarlet and Violet just barely edges them out. Let's Go's fun. I think it's more fun to play it than Crystal. But actually, I'm gonna move things around here. So I'm gonna move Diamond and no, I really do like Let's Go. I can't. I was gonna move Let's Go down, but I'm a Let's Go defender. I will defend Let's Go. I really do like Let's Go. I think these are fine because these are like they want to be these, but they're not. But they're still good games. Like, I'm not gonna put them in D or C. Sword and Shield, I think just have too many pacing and like they're just. I don't think they're the most fun Pokemon games. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are fine. I said this to one of my kids a few months ago, probably like a year ago, but it's one of those things like, yeah, they're fine games, but if I'm gonna play a Diamond and Pearl game, like I kind of rather just play the original. And if at that core, if I'm playing the original, I might as well just play Platinum. You know what I mean? Like, these games are just kind of doubly obsolete. Like, the original is just as good because it literally has the same amount of Pokemon. And then Platinum just is a better game. So, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. You know what? That's not fair. I actually rather play Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon than these games. And honestly, I'd rather play Yellow. I'm going to put these right here. I just think the more I think about these games, just the more disappointed I am. They're fine games. Again, they're still in C tier. They're fine games. But these exist and this exists. So, like, it really just gets pushed down even more. And you might be like, Yellow, well, this game exists. How come Yellow's so high? Well, Yellow is unique enough, I guess. I don't know. This is my ranking. And in D tier, I just don't like these games. So these are the Pokemon games I will actually go on a fence and be like, I don't like these games. And I have. But at the end of the day, I really don't think there's a bad Pokemon game. That's why there's no F tier. But yeah, this is my ranking. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I'm sure a lot of you disagree with me. Tell me your favorite Pokemon game. Tell me your first Pokemon game. Tell me your hot take. Tell me why Sun and Moon are great. Tell me why Black and White 2 are awful. And tell me why Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are the best Pokemon remakes. I'm a good listener. Will I agree with you? Probably not. But yeah. That's my tier list. Yeah, I like it. All right, well, thank you for watching. Until the next tier list, until the next discussion, I will catch you guys later.